Hello
Hi,
there.
beauty.
Hi, how are you guys doing?
Good. I was just saying to Alyse, I was like, I love watching you on Instagram because I'm like, I know that wallpaper.
Yeah.
Exactly. Yes,
Yeah,
yes. My wallpaper that now like everyone knows because we are working from home and doing everything from home.
I know. Oh my God.
So,
Thank,
yeah.
thank you both for doing this with me. It means so much to me because I know how busy you are and you're both so extraordinary and get asked by many people to participate in things like this. So I'm so grateful to you.
Oh,
Oh,
thank
I'm
you.
so happy to see your faces.
Thank you
I
both
know.
for joining us.
Yeah, man, this is great. I mean, obviously, I like love Elise. The issue that I have is that I don't think I've ever said no to Elise, which I'm starting to feel like there
Me
must be some
neither.
sort of higher order, like mind manipulation thing going on. You know what I mean? Because I give a lot of no's, but somehow every time she's involved, there's a yes.
I feel
I
the
don't
same. I feel the same. I
know.
feel the same for both of you though. So it says a lot about, you and your power. Well, listen, let me jump in because I know that your time is limited.
Okay.
So first and foremost, I'm gonna just introduce you to anyone watching, if that's okay. And I'm gonna brag on you both a little bit.
Yes.
Um,
Do it. I love to brag. So go ahead.
I love it so much. So basically, we are all here today in celebration of Women's Equality Day. And I'm here with Alyse Nelson and Bozoma St. John. And I'm celebrating these two women, how extraordinary they are, their incredible accomplishments, and also honoring the journey that brought them here, which I think is so important in talking about who we are as women. We often see the results of our accomplishments, and yet we so rarely talk about the trajectory that brought us to this place. And so I'm so excited to talk to the two of you about that. Okay, Bose, you're first up. I'm gonna brag on you here. Bozoma St. John is the Global Chief Marketing Officer at Netflix, the world's leading streaming entertainment service with 183 million paid memberships in over 90 countries, enjoying TV series, documentaries, feature films across a wide variety of genres and languages. Basically, Netflix is as big as it gets. And she's a boss over there. At the beginning of her career, Bose got her start in marketing at Spike Lee's advertising agency, Spike DDB. She then went on to manage brands within the PepsiCo beverages portfolio before becoming head of music and entertainment marketing at the CPG giant, followed by head of global consumer marketing at Apple Music and iTunes. Girl. Then went on to serve as chief brand officer at Uber before taking on the CEO role of Endeavor. I'm like, I can't even.
I'm exhausted.
I know.
I'm tired.
I'm literally like, I was like, I have to just get into this and just tell people like the incredible, places you've worked in. I'm sure the amazing things you've done, but my God, that list is long.
It is. And there are quite a few stories to go along with it, Kate.
I'm so excited. All right,
You already
Alyse,
know.
very quickly, Alyse Nelson is president and CEO of Vital Voices Global Partnership. A co-founder of Vital Voices, Alyse has worked for the organization for more than 20 years, serving as vice president and senior director of programs before assuming her current role in 2009. Under her leadership, Vital Voices has expanded its reach to serve over 16,000 women leaders in 181 countries. Previously, Alyse served as deputy director of the State Department's Vital Voices Global Democracy Initiative and worked with the president's Council on Women at the White House. Alyse is a member in the Council on Foreign Relations, serves on the Secretary of State's Advisory Committee on Strategic Dialogue with
The former Secretary of State.
Former Secretary of State's Advisory Committee on Strategic Dialogue.
No confusion.
Yes, we'll be very clear about that here with civil society, and is a board member of Running Start. Alyse is the author of the best-selling book, Vital Voices, The Power of Women Leading Change Around the World. And I'm like, I can't believe I get to have a conversation with the two of you badass women.
And
Women's
you.
Equality Day.
And you.
My God, no, I pale in comparison. I'm like, please don't look at my IMDb when I'm reading this.
Are you kidding? You are a force too. You're a force. And so I'm just so glad to be here with the two of you in this conversation. This is awesome. Thank you so much for the invitation.
Oh, thank you both. So I'm going to jump in. So I have some questions that I wrote down that I'm excited to get your feedback on. So obviously it's Women's Equality Day. So I wanted to start about talking about progression. What does that look like for you both from where you started until today?
Gosh, it's right out the gate. I mean, this is, you know what I mean? There was no warm-up questions.
I know, I'm sorry.
No, so good, so good. You know, you're setting the tone. You know, it's like, let's just go right for it. Maybe I'll start. And first, again, I just want to say thank you so much. You know, I think this is such an important conversation to have on a day like this when we are talking about equality, because progression for me also means opportunity, you know, and access. And it doesn't always look the same for women as it does for men. And then, of course, as we look at women of color, there's all kinds of barriers. You know, I certainly in my career have found that there has been a real unlock for me when it came to progression. And first, I'll just talk about like career progression, you know, because I think a lot of times when you read a resume or you think of a woman in power and you look at where she has been, the resume and the roles that she has had are often what then explain basically her journey, even if you don't know all the details. But the real difficulty is that very rarely do we talk about what it takes, you know, to get there. We have used the analogy of breaking the glass ceiling or like climbing up the corporate ladder. And if we go a step further in those analogies or use those examples, what I like to often point out is that, well, what do you think happens, you know, to the woman who breaks through the ceiling or who runs up that ladder with all of the barriers? Like, do you think she's whole and complete when she gets there? You know, like, can we look at what that progression of a career looks like and the toll that it takes on her? You know, what is the support that she get? Does she get bandages along the way?
Right.
You know, what does the support look like? And for me, it has meant that the progression of my career has been absolutely about my village of people who bandage me along the way, who cheer me on, because that road is very lonely and it can be really scary. We don't talk enough about that because obviously it's always about like the strong woman and, you know, trying to make it. And the challenge is that there are often so many things that happen along the way that can, by the way, throw you off the ladder. You know, or you know it, you're slipping down the ladder and you're like, oh, I lost my footing. And then you're trying to get back up. And there are barbs and all kinds of things. So not to make it sound so terrible and so scary, but, you know, sometimes we tend to gloss it over with glamour, you know, when we get to the big titles and it looks so fancy. But let's look back at what it actually took to get to the top, or what it took to keep climbing that ladder. And it is often not pretty. And if we are able to be honest about that, and really, really honest though, and tell our stories in a way that shows the not so pretty sides of things, perhaps actually that will enable other women to also go along in the progression of their careers and know where the issues are, you know how to avoid some of those barbs that are on the ladder, and know how to avoid the pain so that they can make it perhaps faster and perhaps get to the top even more whole than I was, or I am.
Yeah, I mean, it's a beautiful way of putting it, because I often talk, you know, I have a stepdaughter who's 22, and, you know, I think about the young people in the world, and I know you have your beautiful daughter, and I loved your speech so much.
Oh,
when you said walk your walk into your own destiny, like I want that playing on my like TV all the time, just in the background, because it's so inspirational. But to me, you're talking about the idea of vulnerability. And rather than saying, oh, we're strong and we can make it as women and we're going to get to the top, it's going, hey man, this is there's a lot of struggle that comes along with this, and you know what, that's okay. But let's be vulnerable, and let's have that communication as women and as a group of women, so that we can allow for that next generation to feel confident in their vulnerability. Like I so very much would want for my stepdaughter to not feel afraid of vulnerability. I was afraid of it for a long time, and I still struggle with it. But the more that I lean into it and the more work that I do in myself, the more I realize that superpower that vulnerability is.
Yes, yes. And even opening that up, because, you know, I think a part of the talking about and sort of shining a light on this is that I've had, I don't know how many, I mean, countless conversations with especially young women who are, I would say, like, you know, a few years into their career, where the self-doubt creeps in and they feel like they can't make it because they have faced a few things that have knocked them down. And they don't realize that we all go through that. Like we all face those things. And so if it comes to you and you get knocked down a few steps, that's okay. That's okay. That's okay. You know, let's dust ourselves off. You have your sister here to hold your hand and pull you on up. That was part of the speech too. I was like, let's not get caught in this conversation that women aren't out here helping women. I mean, Alyse is living that every day, you know, and it is so inspiring to watch. By the way, I also sit on the board of Vital Voices, so I am biased in this conversation. But I'm inspired by that, because it truly is this word in action, helping women, pulling them along, giving them access, you know, helping when you see that they have an opportunity, but not the access to go and get it. All of those things are true in the work that she is doing right now.
And Boz, I have to say, I love that you have your badass workshops now. I hope you're going to do another round of those.
Yes.
So just FYI, a number of Vital Voices rising stars tune in. And they talk about how you give them like the juice to take on the week. I'm like, okay, wait a minute, you know.
I'm also like, where do you have time?
I know.
Like, I swear to God, you, out of every single person that I follow on Instagram, wonder, where does she find the time to like not only rule the world and run like the, you know, major streaming giant that we've all been watching, you know, day in and day out, but also like have a huge badass workshop. And like, I mean, it's just crazy.
Just trying to do my part. Just trying to do my part.
Paying it forward, really. You are.
Thank you. Thank you.
This is actually, then that's a good, what we were all just discussing was actually a good sort of segue into this next question, which is, okay, so we can look at big strokes in terms of evolving and growing. But one of the things that I think are less discussed are the subtleties. So what are the subtleties that make what you do work? For example, when you're looking to bring change in business or pass an initiative, Alyse, there are a lot of subtle moves to get you there. We only get to see the results. So ultimately, how do you get your message across?
Well, I think, you know, a lot of people may think that in this 24/7 news cycle world that's constantly moving, although now we've all kind of like stopped a little bit, but that change is happening at a faster pace, and it's not. I mean, quite frankly, all change takes time. And I mean, for someone who I've actually been at Vital Voices now for 24 years, and I've really been on this pursuit for gender equality for 25 years, ever since I went to the UN Fourth World Conference on Women in Beijing, China, when I was 21 years old. So, I mean, I think I've really learned that, you know, there is a difference between good intentions and great leadership. And I think that is the courage and commitment to stay the course, no matter how difficult the path. And I think for women leaders, you can be assured that the path will be difficult. There will be many, you know, roadblocks. There will be the bars. There will be the naysayers. And you just have to keep yourself surrounded by people who believe in that vision, even if they challenge you and push you forward, but hopefully they believe in that vision. And obviously mentors. I'm a huge believer in mentors. I mean, I'm a product of Vital Voices. You know, I'm a product of so many extraordinary women mentoring me and pushing me along. And, you know, I think giving me sort of the ropes and the strength that I need to continue to climb the big mountain. But it takes time. And I think you have to be prepared for that. It's that if you want to make change in this world, buckle up, because it's going to take probably more time than you recognize. Not to say that when you get to the end, I mean, look, it's all worth it, and every step along the way, you can celebrate the great successes.
I'd like to know, is that something that you had to learn?
Yeah.
Because I'm like, do we know you're born a Jedi?
Yeah, if I look back at like my 21-year-old self, I'm sure I would have thought we would have solved this women's equality thing by now. Oh, 100%. And the fact that the World Economic Forum is saying it's going to take another 100 years for women to get to equality, and 257 years before we're in economic equality with men, I just don't accept that. Yeah. I mean, if I accepted that, I'd be like, oh, well, there's no use because I won't be around anymore. Right. But, you just can't accept that. You just say, okay, well, there must be a way to speed this up, right?
Yeah. Because Boz, I one of the things that I relate to you a lot with in terms of business is you talk about the idea of urgency.
Mm-hmm. Yes.
I was like, man, we gotta like work together on other things, because I'm the same as you, and I'm curious to know, because it's like, I'm curious to know the balance of like patience and understanding that things take time and the need for urgency, because you know what I mean?
Yeah. No, that is such an incredible distinction, by the way, because I am the first to say I'm very impatient, but to Alyse's point, we understand that things are not overnight, that change doesn't happen overnight, although that doesn't make us stop. It doesn't decrease our passion for moving forward. And when I heard those same predictions, I just changed like sort of my mindset, on what my goal is, or my time goal. So for me, I mean, you mentioned my daughter. She is absolutely one of the inspirations for why I move the way that I move, why I am so urgent in it, because I don't want her to face the things that I faced. Mm-hmm. And I will feel more successful if her journey is better than mine, and I'm using her as an example of a larger generation, of course. But that is where I see like my own sort of speed, and knowing that perhaps it's not the whole thing that's going to be solved, but can we get a few things that are a little bit better? Can there be a few more opportunities that are better? But it does make you pause. And I think, again, we can't ignore the fact that there are going to be things that make you feel like, oh, well, what is the daggone point? What is the point? When I look around, even the C-suite of a lot of, the big companies that sort of run the world and run the stock market. And I see that there are not a lot of women in senior leadership positions, and definitely no Black women. It makes me feel frustrated, because I feel like, well, there have been, I can name the women who came before me, who did this, who probably felt in their time like, oh, I'm doing this for Boz. I'm doing this for a woman like Boz, that she's going to come along and she's going to have, there's going to be a whole army of her, and yet I look around and there isn't. And so I can understand where the frustration and maybe even some of the a depressed outlook could come from. But I think maybe some of it is just my optimism. I think you have to have a healthy dose of optimism to do the work that we do. Because certainly it's like, Alyse at 21 had a healthy dose of optimism. And I can tell you that in meetings that I'm with Alyse now, she still has optimism. And so it is part of what I know must be true if you are going to actually make a difference, because we can't just look at the numbers and say, 250 years, like, oh, well, what am I doing? It's like, well, what can I do right now that's going to make a difference for the next 20 years? Right. If I look back 20 years from now, will there be a difference that I feel like has happened because I existed? I want to say yes.
Yeah. I do think, though, things are changing in a faster pace. And I actually think, you look at this pandemic and how it has, in one sense, brought things to a grinding halt, but on the other hand, made us, I think, more deeply aware. I mean, I feel like I am sort of being pulled apart and put back together almost on a daily basis, just really digging into myself around racial equity issues, around, the huge economic crisis that's coming. And I think there's an opportunity to fast forward progress for women. I mean, look at who is solving some of the greatest challenges. I mean, we see, women heads of state who are dealing with the pandemic in just incredible ways, getting, people back to work, getting, kids back in school. And then, you see that, men are not exactly doing that. And you see, okay, yeah, there is something here about women's leadership. And now the world can see it on display. This was supposed to be a really important year, 25-year celebration of the UN Fourth World Conference on Women, 100 years since the 19th Amendment, granting women the right to vote. Of course, not all women, but I think two important milestones. And I think at the same time, why we haven't gotten to come together to celebrate those things, what we've seen on display in our societies is nothing short of the impossible, and I think that that's the incredible thing about women, is that we do the impossible. I mean, we always have throughout history. You look at, from Sojourner Truth to Susan B. Anthony, oh no, women can't have the right to vote. No, they will, Lema Bowie, stopping the war in Liberia, Greta Thunberg, a teenager, getting the world to focus on climate as an imperative, as an emergency. I think, you think about all of those women throughout history and today, people always said to them, that's impossible. The world said that's impossible. And then, they changed the world. So when I think about this day and women's equality and how far we've come and how far we still need to go, I think about, we're celebrating that women do the impossible. And Bozoma is an incredible example of that. You are.
I love that. I need that on a t-shirt. Women do the impossible. That's really good.
That is really,
really good.
I know. Well, to both of your points, you're both two of the most optimistic human beings that I know and I have the great fortune to love. I associate optimism with choice. I also associate optimism with understanding and honoring very difficult experiences in life. How do you maintain optimism, and what are the most challenging moments in your life that helped look at both sides of the coin?
Whew, that's a good one. Wow, that's a good one. A really, really good one. Oh man, because you would think that given challenges, and obviously I'll make it super personal in my own life, both professionally and personally, that maybe I shouldn't be an optimist. Because there have been just so many things, I think professionally, you read off my resume, but those moves were not easy. Some of them came with a lot of disappointment, a lot of self-doubt, that made me want to jump because I felt that I wasn't valued, or that the way that I was being treated was not fair. And that is painful. It is not something that's just like, oh, just brush your shoulders off and let me go get another job. Nobody wants to do that. I prefer to be, 20 years in somewhere than to necessarily have made all the moves. And so even for me professionally, there are a lot of changes that have happened that it's funny, even when I began my Netflix job, I paused and thought about that, right? That like every single time I have onboarded into a new company with a new title, with a new team, I am optimistic. I feel like, okay, this is it. This is the place where I'm going to be able to do some great work. I'm going to be able to leave a legacy in a way that felt different from before I got here, that I'm an optimist in that way. And part of it is that I feel like a survivor in many ways of corporate America, that I feel that it has tried to take me down quite a few times, and I have not yet been stuck, that I have maneuvered and have reinvented and have, used every ounce of resources at my disposal, whether my own or my networks, to be able to rise above whatever the situation was. And so I'm an optimist because I trust myself and I trust my network of people. And then personally, grief is such a terrible, terrible, terrible burden to carry. I'm a widow, and it certainly for me, meant a real change in my lifestyle, not even just in, life itself, in my perspective. It is part of the reason why, like you said, the word urgency is something that is really at the tip of my tongue most days and most mornings when I wake up, because, from the time my husband was diagnosed with Burkitt's lymphoma to the day of his death was only 6 months, and so when we think about that, it's like, what can you do in 6 months?
Right.
What are the things that you are able to accomplish? And most of the time, especially when it comes down to like goals or experiences that I want to have, I canceled those 5-year plans on the day he died. I canceled all of them because my perspective changed. And so knowing that I am able to survive grief at its most raw, and to see life in a totally new way makes me a complete optimist. I'm like, wow, okay, we've got another day. I see it as such an opportunity. What a gift. Yeah. What a privilege. It's like we say that stuff all the time, right? It's like carpe diem or and we say these things, but we're not really paying attention to what it really means. Diane Ackerman has a quote that I just love. I love it. I love it. I love it. I actually shared it during the Badass workshop in my 5th session. And she says, I'm paraphrasing, so it's not exact, but she says, I'd like to get to the end of my life and realize that I not only lived the length of it, but I lived the breadth of it. And to me, that is what is so wonderful about optimism. I want to live the breadth of my life, the width of it. I want to fill every corner of it, so I wake up in the morning and I'm like, yeah, let's go after today. Even on the days when it doesn't feel great, because I'm not going to pretend some days I don't wake up and I'm just like, okay, sheets, where are my comforter? Let me let me go back, but I am reminded, because of my survival, that my optimism is really the only way that I move forward.
That's so beautiful. And you're doing it. I feel like you're the cream. You're always going to rise to the top, no matter what.
Thank you.
100%.
You are. I love you're like, oh, there's struggle. It's like, really? I just see you going from strength to strength to strength to strength, and having a lot of fun.
Thank you,
very
Alyse.
Important. Yeah. Well, I think what keeps me optimistic is working with amazing women like Boz, women all over the world. There are women that I work with who are, pulling kids out of human trafficking, who are working to build businesses of the future, women who are dealing with some of the worst of humanity, and what they do and their commitment to leadership and to humanity, it represents the best of humanity. And I feel like when you get to work alongside women like that, and now we've supported 18,000 women, and you have that network of women that is with you, they become your cocoon. And there have been times, either it's been personally or professionally, where I've had a difficult time. They have wrapped themselves around me. And it's a really beautiful thing. And I think that there is something about women coming together with women. I mean, we've done studies around this as well, where when we have really strong networks of our peers that are non-hierarchical, that are non-competitive, and that are really diverse, we come from different backgrounds and different industries, that they encourage us to take more risks and to be more optimistic about the future. And that's like data we have that we know. So, I think a lot of times people can sort of toss off the power of networks, but it's real. And I think particularly networks of women, there's something magical about it.
How did you arrive here? What is the,
boy.
you know, tell us about the organization, and with that, what are you inspired about for the future with the organization? And I will say that anyone watching, please, you know, donate to Vital Voices. The link will be in my bio. It's just the most incredible organization that I've had the honor to work with. And Alyse, I would love for you to, you know, describe what it is that you do with the organization.
Yeah, well, so we were founded 23 years ago on the heels of the UN Fourth World Conference on Women in Beijing, China, which was the largest gathering of women ever in history. 55,000 women leaders from 189 countries came together. And really, we were founded because women's voices, women's power was not being heard, was not being felt. And what we knew, although we didn't have the research back then, is that no country could move forward if half the population was left behind, the women and girls. And now we've got great data that shows that that's true. But what we do as an organization is we search the world for women who have a daring vision for change. It could be the woman who's in India who's ending the cycle of, you know, of violence and human trafficking. It could be, you know, the woman in Kenya who is starting up a girls' school where girls stopped going to school at age 13 once they menstruated. That was the end, right? It's just these incredible change makers, and we basically get behind them and their vision for change, and we help them take it to scale. And we do that through mentoring, through training, a network of their peers, as we talked about, visibility, credibility, financial support. And you can imagine right now there is more and more need. And we believe really strongly that we've got to grow. We've got to, you know, take it to the next. We've actually just recently acquired a historic building in Washington, D.C., and we're creating the first ever Global Leadership Center for women. For around the world, almost like an embassy for women leaders. We have, should be exciting for Boz. We have, can you see this? I'm sorry, the sun from my window. Yes. But anyway, this is our new book coming out.
Oh, wow.
It's in here. So, you know, you got 100 women using their power to empower.
One of
the women is, Malala. And then we got on this next page, look at that.
Oh, yeah.
I got the glare, but I'm a really big believer in this work. And I mean, you were talking about how sometimes it's hard to stay optimistic, you know, along the path. But you know, people, I love the story of where your optimism comes from, Boz. And I feel like you know, for me, so much of the optimism comes from the stories of women like you. But also, you know, I myself, as a very, very young woman, 21-year-old, traveled to that conference in Beijing, China, 25 years ago. And I heard Hillary Clinton speak, and I was really inspired by that famous speech that she gave, women's rights are human rights are women's rights. And I knew, like, I really wanted to dedicate my life to this. And this was like before Google, right? So you couldn't Google women's rights and learn about it. You know, this was really before technology was able to connect us. And so this was the way to be connected to women and learn about what was going on around the world. And these were issues that I knew my generation, which was going to be a global generation, didn't know about. And so I went back and set to work, and really with this idea that I didn't have the power maybe of someone like Hillary Clinton, who could give a speech and it would travel around the world before social media. But that I had a voice, and with that voice, I had power, and with that passion, I had power. And that's really been my mantra. It's on my shirt. I don't know if you can see it. Use your power to empower. It's the name of this book we have coming out. But it's—
You get the shirts too, Alyse?
Oh, the shirts. Well, you know what? We need to make these again. This was a partnership we had, but we need to get them out there again.
Yeah.
But yeah, so the people, but you can go onto our website and you can donate, and you can get a copy of the book featuring—
definitely getting that. That book looks beautiful.
Bozoma. Yeah. But I think, you know,
I'm so excited.
I think that all of us, you know, women, you know, we're called to leadership, I think, from something different. We're motivated by wanting to right a wrong, by something personal. and stepping forward. And I think there's something really special about that that's needed. And I think because of that, and because we're motivated by wanting to right the wrong, and because we're driven by passion and compassion and have great empathy, I think that because of that, we lead differently. And I think that that difference is so desperately needed in our world. If you think about fixing the challenges, of the next. And I think that's what keeps me going. People always say, you've been at Vital Voices so long, isn't it time to move on? And I'm like, are you kidding me? Like, we're just getting started.
Yeah.
I mean, and I'm constantly reinvigorated by extraordinary women I get to meet and learn from along the way.
It's such, I mean, I said to Alyse the other day on the phone, Bose, like, Alyse, like, out of all people I know, has this like witchy intuition of like bringing the most, like, very like heartfelt, to the core lightning rod for certain women to like come together. Like, you really do. I feel so grateful to be involved with the organization and to like know all the women that you've introduced me to, really.
I think it's wonderful.
And Kate, I mean, you are luminous. I mean, you really are. Oh. And what it is so much of me, you of course are very beautiful, but so much of your beauty is this like heart that's like coming outward. And you're luminous. You really are.
I feel that way about the two of you.
I mean, I just love this love fest that we have going on here. This is fantastic. This is amazing.
Okay, Bo. So I thank you so much, Alyse. That means a lot to me.
It's so true.
Okay, so what's so funny is that your Instagram handle is badass Bose.
That's right.
And what's so funny is that in high school, I was called Badass Boz.
Oh, get out of here! Please.
Yeah, no, in high school, I was known as Boz. That like my teachers would say like, hey, Boz, like, come on. And it was B-O-Z. So like, I have to like really mentally work to call you Bose.
Oh my gosh, that is so amazing. Look at that. That's incredible. That's
super cool.
There's like a badass Boz and a badass Bose on this.
Yes, exactly.
You are badass. You surfed like before girls surfed.
Oh my gosh.
I mean,
thank God.
Yeah, really. Yes, badass indeed. Badass indeed.
Oh, that's a whole nother story, man. But yeah, I mean, I earned some badass stripes for that one for sure. But I want to know, Bose, like, you're now global chief marketing officer at NETLFLIX, and we all know NETLFLIX is like, NETFLIX doesn't get bigger. What is that like? What is it like for you?
Yeah. It feels just like that, like NETFLIX, like that. It feels like that. Because the thing is that, of course, it's like, pop culture marketing has been, my sort of calling card for a long time, what to do with products or experiences that are in the zeitgeist, and how to connect them with people and their stories and their experiences and then their loyalty. That has been sort of the cornerstone of the way that I have, created my career. And now, like in this very moment, especially like as we look around the world, not just because we're, sheltering at home and we're looking for entertainment, but because we have such a responsibility in our storytelling, and the diversity of that, and the way that people are influenced by that. I find it really inspiring. I mean, it's what I talked to both Reed and Ted about, as I made my decision to join, was in that, how are the stories that are being told able to shape people's perception, so that like, if you've never understood a certain issue, like, is there content for you to watch and understand that better, and it doesn't even need to be just, documentary or sort of nonfiction. It can be fiction, it can be storytelling in its true sense, where you get to see the real vulnerability, of course, brought to bear by artists such as yourself, so that you can better understand, what it takes for human beings to exist in a world that maybe you don't live in. And I think that's the real beauty of this moment. So I'm very, very excited. I'm, looking forward to all of the things, all of the projects that are on the horizon.
I'm so excited as well because I worked on a show for Netflix about a year and a half ago, and I loved working with them. I love the there's a lot of I mean, and this is a bit rare in the sort of corporate world, but the sort of freedom to creatives, like there's a lot of support for creativity at Netflix, which I appreciated as an artist.
Yes, absolutely. And for me, that's essentially what I'm trying to do, right? Create conversations in a way that is going to be culture shifting.
Mm-hmm.
And that's what I want to do. Yeah.
I love it. I'm so excited. Hopefully we're on one together there.
We're calling it into the universe now.
Yeah. Here we go. Yes. Okay, I learned to ask this question when I interviewed a really good friend of mine, Martha Raddatz, which was quite intimidating because she's like such an amazing journalist. I'm like, what do you ask, one of the most prolific journalists? And I really am interested to know this about both of you. What makes you curious? What makes you curious today? Like what piques, like what gets that lightning, rod, that sort of spark going?
You want to start?
I think Alyse, you go.
Your turn, Alyse.
What makes me curious? Oh my gosh, so many things. I mean, I'm on my own journey and really unpacking racial justice, white supremacy. I mean, I think that's sort of curious or flattened to the ground, whatever you want to say. I would also say my kids make me really curious. I have 2 little kids, 4 and 6, and just watching them explore the world, seeing the way that they see things. It's, and quite frankly, not traveling now, so getting to spend so much time with them, I think that makes me really curious. I feel like I'm always curious, so it's almost kind of like a weird question. Like, what am I curious about today? I'm kind of curious about all of it, what new ways can we go? How do we engage new people? So I think it's like, I'm in a constant state of curiousness, and it's good. I mean, how else do you become better than to learn? Right. And I think this constant process of saying, I'm not there yet. I might be the CEO of an organization. I might be in my dream job, but I'm not there yet. I'm far from there. And I've got to stay curious and stay challenged and stay passionate.
Yeah, I think that's so important because I bring up curiosity because I don't know if we can have progress without curiosity. It's
totally agree.
Yeah.
Totally agree with that. And I think maybe I'll just piggyback on that, right? Because certainly humanity, constantly makes me curious. I really love people and their stories. It is probably why I'm in the work that I'm in, because at the end of the day, it's really just storytelling all of the time, and before we were sheltered at home, I traveled a lot. I was in a lot of airports and a lot of different cities. And the only good thing about that was that I really enjoy like people watching. It is one of my favorite activities, to really understand how people interact with each other, how they react to each other, what they're talking about without necessarily being involved, because to observe it is sometimes such a gift. Because then you don't have to put your own opinions in, and staying objective is a really powerful tool to have a better understanding, because when you're in the conversation, you're subconsciously and consciously thinking about what you're going to say, what you're going to contribute. And so it's very hard to listen when you're in the conversation. It's like, I think sometimes, even in personal relationships or in work, I have often found that resolutions happen best when one person doesn't say anything at all. When you are allowed to simply listen, you don't have to react, you don't have to defend, you don't have to do anything, just be objective and just listen, and that to me is such a great thing about like sort of watching people and watching society, because it makes me constantly curious about their own stories. Again, we say like, don't judge a book by its cover, but we rarely actually take that into practice. You know, it's
Totally.
like, if you really don't get involved, you know, don't get involved, just observe, you know, be objective with an
Yeah.
open heart and open mind. And you'll be so surprised by what you learn,
Mm,
and how it makes you better because
mm.
of that knowledge and that observation.
I love that. I feel like I'm just starting to get my head around that now at 37, a little bit, because I have the impatient gene and the urgency gene, which has helped me in business, but in relationships, like my husband just wants to like, he's just like, listen, and I'm like, I'm like, but no, just listen.
Yeah, no, no. Yeah, just listen. Shh. Everybody just shh. Sometimes it's yourself, you know? So,
Yes.
but isn't that so wonderful though? And in any situation, you know, whether somebody is, getting to know you, or you're trying to resolve an argument or anything. I mean, even now with my onboarding and trying to get to know my new colleagues, you know, in these one-on-ones, I literally say it up front. You know, I was like, I'm not actually going to say anything during this meeting. I was like, I just want to hear about you and what you think and your experience. That's all. You know, and people sometimes will just like, they're almost thrown off, right? Because they're like, don't know quite what to do with this.
Right.
But the truth of the matter is that if I am in the conversation, then I'm really not listening. I'm listening to half of it, maybe, because you're always thinking about what you're going to say and how you're going to respond. And you cannot do both. You know, I think we're like tricked into this thought that like the conversation is like, you know, some sort of tennis or something, just back and forth. But the problem is that you don't just react. You have to hear it, think about what you're going to say, and then say it. So the part that you were thinking about what you're going to say, you stop listening. You know, so if you just take that pressure off, then you will be a better active listener and better able to retain the information that you're getting.
Totally.
Yeah.
Okay, this one's an important one because it kind of goes back to, I want to talk about like going back to the very start. And I say this because it's important to me in that all the young girls watching this, you know, and like thinking about where you are in your life, this question's, you know, kind of for you. I'm always interested in the spark that initiated it all. So for example, in my life, I was 13 years old. I was a very obsessed with horse riding. I was a show jumper, and it was like my life. And I happened to hear about a movie being cast out of New York City where the casting director and the director wanted a real horseback rider as the actress. And I thought, and like the spark went off, and I was like, I've never participated in a scene. I've never performed in a play. I was very creative as a kid. I read still, but I read a lot of books and sort of would get lost in that world. But something sparked. I ended up going to the open casting call and got cast in the movie Robert Redford's The Horse Whisperer, and he was the director of that movie. And that ended up being the spark that really like set things off. And I'm curious for you, it doesn't, you know, I was 13-year-old Kate, but regardless of the age, sort of what was the spark for Boz and the spark for Alyse? What did that look like for you?
Wow. Gosh, these are great questions. The spark.
They are.
The spark. I don't know that mine probably isn't as direct, although now I can go back and see, you know, where it may have started from, because as a kid, I was good at the sciences and math. You know, those were my strong suits in school. And I think because of, you know, the numbers of, you know, women, especially women of color, who were encouraged in science and math, everybody said, you know, well, she's going to be a scientist or a doctor or something like that. So that's what was in my head, like throughout, you know, my adolescence, and even going into college. I was pre-med in undergrad. But if I look back and sort of look at like where the spark is for me, and where this kind of love came from, and then how it sort of like made its way into my life, I would say it probably started at 12, almost 13, with my family's move from Ghana in West Africa to Colorado Springs, Colorado. And the reason why it was a spark is that it was, although as a child, like we moved often. So I was often the new kid where I'd have to, reintroduce myself and, all of the things that we know what it is to be the new kid. But at that age, it was such a big cultural shift, that the way that I had to interact with my schoolmates and my classmates was more pronounced, so it meant that I had to be faster at learning the culture, and it was actually very academic for me. It meant that, because if you didn't know about the music that was on the radio or the TV shows that were on on that people watched that the night before, or right, the movie or the score or the, quarterback. I was in the John Elway days in Denver, it was like, if you didn't know that stuff, you were going to be the outsider, and I was already an outsider. I already had all the outside things. And so I had to make it academic to learn. And so from that time, I understood the power of finding the common ground, the commonality, that it really didn't matter if we spoke the same language, or if, we had the same color skin, or if we had the same name, Boz or Bose, that that didn't matter, as long as like I could find something. So you literally took just one thing to connect us, and so now in my work, that is always what I'm looking for. What is the one thing? I don't need to connect on 100 things. I just need one thing for us to have a similar understanding of. Everything else falls away. And so that humanity and understanding the human connection was something I learned very, very, very early on, and I have kept since.
That's beautiful. That's
the first time that I heard Boz speak, I'm sorry, I'm doing it, Bose.
I know.
That's so great. Anyway, I love it.
The first time I heard her speak, she was talking about her 13-year-old self, very tall, moves to Colorado Springs, Colorado. I can only imagine how white and likely Republican it would have been.
Yes,
anyway,
very much. Very
she
much.
walks in, and it's like, I couldn't be them. I had to be me. And I love that. I was like, I am in love with this woman. And she needs to be involved in Vital Voices. That was that. I was like, done.
Yes, that's it.
Anyway, and then I used my witchy powers on her.
Yeah, I know. I was
yes.
gonna say.
All the witchy powers. All of the witchy powers.
I stole that from my friend Erica Chitty. She said to me once, she said, "You're a bit witchy," and I was like, "Huh." I sort of weirdly like that. And now I give it to you, Alyse, and it's all very witchy.
No, well, can I tell you though, I actually believe in that, but I feel like I have to be in the right frame of mind to like tap into that stuff. Yeah. I have to be well rested. I have to not be in like the day to day. You have to be free to be able to really tap into that greater intention. So I think, for me, I think of a spark as something that I talk about as a driving force, which is like that thing, or it could be a series of things that happens that leads you in a certain direction. And it's got hold of you so tightly that you can't let go. I mean, as you were saying, you were into horseback riding. Did you want to be an actress? No, but like this thing carried you there and it got hold of you, right? And I think that there is that for everyone. I mean, I think that everyone in this world has a driving force, that sort of reason for being, that life mission statement. Not to put it too simply, but I think a lot of times we don't tap into it because we don't listen, we don't take the leap, we don't take the risk. People tell us, no, you can't do that. I mean, obviously you had supportive parents who said, okay, let's go to New York City, and audition. Okay, I mean, and I think we need those supportive people. I mean, for me, I grew up with an absolute badass of a mother. She surfed. She started surfing at age 50. She's 78. She still surfs.
I love that.
And for me, growing up with her, but at the same time having her say that no one supported her to be an architect because they said, well, no one will ever, have a woman design or build a strong structure. So seeing her in actuality and how strong she was and how brave she was and how optimistic and passionate and positive she was, then on the other end, that anyone ever pushed her down or told her she couldn't do something. And so to me, I always had this question in my head of why? Why would somebody say that to a woman? What is it about women? Like, what is that? And trying to get to the bottom of it, and knowing that my mother, my grandmother, so many women before me had fought for rights, but knowing also around the world that maybe wasn't the case. Turns out it's actually not the case here either. But you know, I think that it was that spark, and then hearing about the Beijing Women's Conference, that I think really led me on that journey. But again, it's saying yes to something crazy, right? I mean, it's, you know, it's saying yes to, okay, yeah, I'm going to be myself. Like, that is the boldest move a 13-year-old could make, you know, to say, I'm going to be me.
Yeah.
So I think we could, you know, we could all use a little bit of boldness to, you know, take hold of our driving force and follow it to the crazy places it will lead.
Well, that's a good one, because this is the second to last question, Alyse. But I really want to know. This is me as someone who will take this on as gems. How do you both move through fear? And as you're both incredible leaders, they're sort of piggybacking off each other. What are the leadership qualities does it take to helm where you're at? So how do you work through fear? And so essentially, to distill it, what does it take, in your opinion, to make a great leader?
Another really great question. These are all very good philosophical questions.
Sorry.
Really, really good. Very good.
Well, I have two of the most incredible women here. I'm like, I want to know, you know, I want to know these answers.
Yeah. I mean, I think, man, okay, so I'm going to answer the fear part in a couple of ways. I think you have to be a little crazy.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? I think you do. I think you have to be a little crazy to move through what you are afraid of and get to the other side. So I won't even pretend that like it is necessarily all muscle, you know, because you have to be willing to not know what is on the other side and still go forward. And that requires a little bit of not being all the way there. You know what I mean? And so I consider myself that way, you know, that I will often do the thing that people will be like, oh, no, I've done the math and that does not add up. Don't do it. You know, or you get the advice and it's like, no, don't do it. The other part of it is that I am fortunate enough to be one of 4, you know, daughters in my family. And we are all very close in the age. I'm the eldest and the youngest is 6 years younger than me. And so I've had the privilege of having somebody's hand to hold when I am scared. And it is something that I've carried with me into adulthood, whether with my literal sisters or my new sisters that I have found along the way. And that has been a real gift, because think about, you know, when you were a kid and when you were dared to do something that you were afraid of, you know, how did you do it? Well, because people were egging you on, you know, people were like, go, 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 you know, and you were like, ah, and you jumped, you know what I mean? Like, you kind of need that, you know? So although I do believe that it takes a certain amount of, you know, strength and chutzpah, as they say, you know, and a little bit of crazy, I also think it requires that bond of people who are going to cheer for you and tell you to go, 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 who will not stop, who won't stop. They won't put that doubt into your head. They won't say, ooh, girl, watch out, it's a long way down. You know, they'll just say, they won't do it themselves. But you know what? Here's the real key, though. Here's the real key, which is that you need people who aren't always the most brave themselves, but are willing to cheer you on past your bravery, right? Because it is, again, like childhood where, you know, you stand at the top of that cliff and you had to jump into the water, and you know that your little girlfriend was not about to do it. She was not about to get up there, but she was like, yeah, Boz, go ahead, go do it. Go stand up there at the top, you know? And so you need people like that too. It doesn't always require that everyone around you can move past their fear, as long as they're encouraging you to move past yours.
I love that. I love that so much. And
Yeah.
I think it's one of the reasons it struck me when you were talking. It's one of the reasons why people love the movie Blue Crush so much, is because the main character was facing down, like my character was facing down such a crazy fear, but it was Michelle's character, you know, that said, I believe in you. I see you. I see that girl. And I think that that is, yes, it's this beautiful kind of feminist movie. But I think it's the friendship that actually women really love about that movie, you know, and exactly what you're talking about.
And you can create it, you know, it's like, if you don't have it naturally, you can create it. It's okay. You know, and if you find that there are people who are cheering you on, but also sowing that doubt, then you should probably let them go.
100%. Yes. That is great advice.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah. It is so important, I think, during this time, who you surround yourself with. You need the tribe of people who are going to be like, yes, yes, yes. You know, I mean, not that you don't want constructive criticism or feedback along the way, but I think you just need that positive tribe, particularly now. So I spent a lot of time thinking about how we shorten this 100 years or 250 years before we get to equality, right? And I think I just kind of got to this point where my sort of mantra was go bold or go home, right? Go big or go home, go bold or go home. Like that's just it. And so a really big step we made was to acquire this building. And it's scary, right? I mean, we now own this building and I have this vision for it. We all have this vision for it. And, you know, I feel like if I doubt myself, it's not going to happen, right? Like I need to continuously bring people in, but it's really scary. But I think at a certain point, you know, I'm like, okay, what's the worst that could happen, right? I mean, sure, things could go badly, but it's like, what is the worst? I think you need to kind of ask yourself that. And it's like, but even worse than that, wouldn't have been worse if we never tried.
Totally.
Like, you know, and so I think kind of weighing those pieces and to say, we got to go big right now. We got to go bold if we want to have a breakthrough solution. And not that this building is going to create breakthrough solutions, but I think that the idea is we all need to be thinking way beyond our comfort zone to solve these seemingly intractable problems. We need the big, bold, out of the box, crazy ideas. We need the people who are not typically at decision-making tables to sit there and help us, right? And I think that's the only way we're going to push through. And so I feel like if I'm not living in this place of fear and pushing through it, then I'm not thinking big enough. And that's what's needed right now. You know, I mean, our world is, we got some challenges, you know, we got some challenges. Yeah. So, you know, it's no time to, you know, shrivel.
Yeah. I don't know if we answered the second part of your question. Did we? Was it? It was
the leadership. Yeah. I mean, I just, how can we be like you? Give us the short answer so we can thrive.
No, right? Yeah. The short answer. Oh my gosh. Well, actually, I mean, this is the irony of it, right? Which is that there are so many ways to lead, you know, that I think sometimes we're so stuck on the title or being up at the top that we forget that leadership is actually not necessarily just about being at the top of the pyramid, but that leadership comes in so many different ways. And that if we can all lead at different points, not only in our careers and our lives, but that we will actually then move culture in a way that we will really be proud of, you know, that actually is the real difference maker. You know, I've been asked a lot, you know, about like, oh, well, when I get to this, you know, place in my career, then how do I begin to make the changes either in the corporate environment or in culture that I want to see? And my answer is always like, don't wait, you know, don't wait until you get somewhere, this mythical place, you know, at the top before you start enacting or using your power, you know, because really when we talk about leadership, we're talking about like some power, you know, what is the power that you have and how can you enact it in the places where you are currently? You know, if it is in, you know, in your community, or if it's in your child's school, or if it is in your office, or if it is in your, charity that you're working with, how do you enact, your influence? How do you make it actionable so that your voice can be heard in places that perhaps it's not? Even as we've talked like in this past year, not just about, our health disparities, but, racial and social injustice. I was so blessed that so many friends who asked, how they could help or what they could do, essentially took to their own, to their own platforms and their own places and their own friendship circles, right? Places where I am not, and use their voice to make a difference in a way, and sometimes in just talking about it, just talking about it, like not in the hushed tones, in the big loud voice, even if it's just to your family, Yeah. So I think leadership is about being able to see your power in every place that you are in and at every stage. And really, if you begin to do that, I don't think there'll be a moment in life where you don't feel like you're a leader.
God, that's so good.
Right. I would say, authenticity, right? People are really craving real leaders. They want to know, we know everything about each other because of social media, but we're always craving that authenticness. And, I think also people are craving right now empathy and compassion in leaders. And I think, Boz, you mentioned it earlier, this idea of having the ability to cross those lines that divide and find that one thing we agree on. Women are really good at that, actually. We've seen this time and time again, whether it's, the Catholics and the Protestants in Northern Ireland coming together, to create what could later become the peace accords, right? We see that certainly in our Congress, right? Women coming together across all these different things that divide us. And I think that makes for a great leader. I mean, I've learned great lessons in leadership from women that we work around the world, women in this country, and I'm just constantly listening, constantly aware, and trying to incorporate those things. I think one of the biggest lessons I've learned about leadership is that really great leaders understand something very fundamental, that power expands the moment it's shared. So if you think about leaders in countries around the world who like hoard power, and then everything crumbles, their economy crumbles, their people are starving, people are living below the poverty line. But yet leaders who empower, who open up, who use their power to empower, right? Who expand it, who spread it, it just multiplies. And I think if you take that down to just yourself, and I see this so much with women, it's like they gain something and they're like, who can I share this with? Who can I bring along? I mean, Boz, you just did it with your wonderful Share the Mic Now, right? Share the Mic, that was the name, right? Yeah.
Yes, that's right.
And yeah, I mean, and I love that, because it was like powerful women with platform and voice sharing it with, actually women who are really damn powerful too, but maybe don't have as big of a mic.
Right.
I loved that, because I think and I say it, and I said it before, I say it again, I think that women do really lead differently. I mean, that's what I've seen and learned, and that difference is desperately needed.
Yeah.
One of the things that I'm going to take, this is one of the quotes that you said, Alyse, actually, it's one of my favorite quotes that I've ever read. You said, one of the things I've learned along the way is that a person's path to leadership is rarely planned out perfectly. It's an experience that begins with a conviction to do something.
Yeah.
It's so good, because I'm like I'm in recovery for being a perfectionist. I'm trying to not, be so hard on myself all the time, but I loved that you were like, it's not about being perfect about something. It's not being a leader and being perfect. It's about saying, hey, I have conviction. I want to do something. Let's just jump off the cliff and do it. And sometimes that can birth the, really beautiful leader.
Yeah. Yeah.
So beautiful. Beautiful.
I'm ending on this one very lighthearted question, you guys. Let's tell me the most ridiculous and funniest thing that's happened to you over quarantine.
Oh my gosh, how many things.
I know.
Oh gosh, so many things. I don't even know where to start. I mean, maybe I'll just my daughter probably. And I said, during this conversation that math and science, were like my strong suits growing up. But somehow 5th grade math and now 6th grade math are literally kicking my ass. Like I don't know what to do. And it is just so ridiculous that I'm like, oh my God, this is where, I said, like, count on your network, call on your friends. And I'm over here like, ah! Like, I don't know what to do with myself. It's like, it's just the most frustrating situation. And to learn to, like, first of all, forgive myself for not knowing,
Yeah.
And then also, like, you know what? We're in a global pandemic. You know what I mean? Like, 5th grade and 6th grade math, listen, they're going to write about this time in all kinds of different think pieces and all of that. So, you know what? It might be all right that she's not getting 100% of what she needs. It's okay.
Yeah.
So, yes.
Yeah.
That's
around these parts at the Nelson Lang household, my son, who's 4, clothing is definitely optional. I mean, if we at some point get a pair of underwear on that boy, it is a good day. And you know what? You got to pick your battles. And I'm like, he's 4, fine. Anyway, but there was a time, and it could happen during this very discussion, where he'll burst in here because it's gotten late and, he wants to see what I'm up to. And it's 5 o'clock and he's, not
oh my God.
So that has happened. I mean, luckily.
That's hilarious.
It was not a recorded session.
Oh my God.
A very understanding group of people I was with, but
that's hilarious. The crazy, crazy times. Thank you both. I'm so grateful to be celebrating Women's Equality Day with 2 of the most extraordinary women I know. And just thank you for giving me your time and for giving everyone your time and for all the beautiful, inspiring things that you lended to incredible leaders in the world.
Oh, thank you so much for orchestrating this and for asking the most incredible questions. So yeah, thank you. Appreciate it.
Yeah.
Thank you. I'm so aware I've taken up so much of your time. I'm so scared. Oh my God. I was so enthralled.
It was so much fun.
Like, no, don't let that be the time. Thank you so much. I love you both and I hope to see you soon for a real squeeze.
All right. Take care.
All right. Thanks, guys. Bye-bye.